My name is Dan Whitfield, and I'm an independent candidate for the United States Senate here in Arkansas. I believe that a government should be by the people, for the people. And that's why with my platform, I plan on giving Arkansans their voices back. I want my constituents to be able to vote on policy before I cast my vote in their name, because that's what I believe a representative should be, the voice of the people. We're facing these issues today that cross party lines. It doesn't matter if you're a liberal, if you're a conservative, if you're a Republican, if you're a Democrat. Our representatives aren't representing us. We're the 49th poorest state in America, and we pay the third highest sales tax. The reason for this? It's simple. It's because our representatives aren't concerned with what's best for us. They're concerned with what's best for their donors. That's why I've already pledged not to take any special interest money. I'm not going to take money from billionaires. I'm not going to take money from Walmart or Tyson. My campaign is purely grassroots. It's the people that are funding my campaign. These are the same people that I want to represent, the same people that I want to have a voice in the legislative system. If you believe that our government is supposed to be by the people, for the people, please check out my campaign, look at my platform, and I think you'll like what you see. My name's Dan Whitfield. You can find my platform at www.danwhitcongress.us. Thank you. Good evening. My name's Dan Whitfield, and I have a very unique Bernie story. In 2015, Bernie Sanders woke me up. He showed me the corruption in our government. He showed me how our legislators are taking huge sums of money in exchange for favorable legislation that hurts their constituents and their families. That's why I decided to run for the United States Senate. That's why I'm running against one of America's most corrupt senators. Because he doesn't represent his constituents, he represents his special interest donors. We need to rise up. We need to take our government back from these donors and give it to the people in which it belongs. This is just the beginning of my Bernie story, and I can't wait to see how it ends. I wish you all a happy.
So 8 years ago, Steve Donziger and a team of Ecuadorian lawyers won the largest human rights court judgment in history in a $9.5 billion verdict against the Chevron Corporation on behalf of indigenous and farmer plaintiffs in that country. Chevron now claims that the Ecuador verdict was achieved fraudulently and produced a witness who told a U.S. court that he knew about a bribe.
So the judge ruled in Chevron's favor, halting collection of the pollution fine in the U.S. from Chevron and actually placing Donziger on house arrest. Donziger faces a September 9th bench trial for contempt of court. Here to explain his side of the story against the oil giant is lawyer Steve Donziger himself. It's good to see you, Steve. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So, Steve, tell us about this case, the original judgment that you had in Ecuador, how Chevron appears to be, in your view, is retaliating against you, and how you somehow ended up under house arrest after winning this large judgment against Chevron Corporation.
Yeah, thank you. So I think the best way to understand this case, it's not that complicated. Chevron has tried to make it complicated so people don't understand it. But you can look at it in two basic parts. One is there was a case filed in Ecuador on behalf of indigenous groups and farmer communities against Chevron after Chevron, operating as Texaco, had dumped billions of gallons of toxic waste onto indigenous ancestral lands, leading to a massive outbreak of cancer and the abandonment of about 1,000 open-air toxic waste pits that were gouged out of the jungle that have completely poisoned a 1,500 square mile swath of Amazon rainforest with devastating effects on the local populations. It's really a humanitarian catastrophe. That lawsuit was filed by me and other lawyers, and we won that case in Ecuador in 2011. The case was in Ecuador at Chevron's request. They accepted jurisdiction there. They promised to pay any adverse judgment. But as the evidence mounted against them, and they knew they were going to lose, they started to come up with a strategy to attack the lawyers, attack me, and try to undermine the judgment. So they came back to the U.S. We won the case in 2011, by the way. It's been affirmed by 6 appellate courts in Ecuador and in Canada for enforcement purposes. But collaterally, they came back to New York and filed a racketeering lawsuit against me and all the 47 villagers who were on the lawsuit, as well as some other people. We were denied a jury. They paid a witness $2 million to come in and lie about a supposed bribe. There's zero corroborating evidence. The witness later admitted that under oath that he had lied before the judge, Judge Kaplan. The judge ruled against me and my clients in Ecuador. We kept pursuing the case in Canada, where we got a unanimous Supreme Court decision from Canada supporting the case. And ultimately, Judge Kaplan, former tobacco industry lawyer, I think he has a record of bias in this case, ordered me to turn over my computer and cell phone to Chevron, which is an unheard of and I believe unconstitutional order that invades attorney-client privilege. I appealed that to the Second Circuit, the federal court in New York. It's still on appeal. And during the pendency of the appeal, he charged me with criminal contempt of court for not following an order that was on appeal, and he had me locked up. I'm the only lawyer in American history ever detained pretrial on a criminal contempt charge. It's been now 13 months. I'm being denied a jury again. The case is being treated as a misdemeanor with a maximum sentence of 6 months in jail. Why am I in pretrial detention for 13 months when the maximum sentence is 6 months? I think this is a case of retaliation by Chevron. I think Chevron is orchestrating this. My prosecutor is not a government prosecutor. This is a very important point. She works for a private law firm that has Chevron as a client. The U.S. attorney, the SDNY in New York, rejected these charges. And the judge who charged me, Judge Kaplan, who's been overseeing this for many years, appointed this private law firm. So, this is an example, big picture, of a failure to get justice in the United States. And, people are seeing more and more of this in recent months with the Black Lives Matter movement. It is, I think this is an example of basically how our court system is really failing the vulnerable. And, it's not that there's personal attack on me, although it manifests that way. It's really, this is an attack on the idea of human rights law. Yeah. The idea that indigenous peoples in the rainforest have a right to get into court and hold a U.S. company accountable for a massive human rights violation in Ecuador that Texaco did over decades, that continues to this day, continues to kill people, and is causing a major humanitarian catastrophe. And by attacking me, they think they don't have to pay the judgment, and they can try to intimidate, every other human rights lawyer out there that might think about taking on this kind of case.
Yeah. So, Steve, let me read the statement that Chevron provided actually to The Intercept based on their reporting on all of this that's going on. They said any jurisdiction that observes the rule of law should find the fraudulent Ecuadorian judgment to be illegitimate and unenforceable. It also said that Chevron will continue to work to hold the perpetrators of this fraud accountable for their actions, including Steven Donziger, who's committed a litany of corrupt and illegal acts related to his Ecuadorian judicial fraud against Chevron. Obviously, you just rebutted those claims, but I wanted to ask you about Chevron's tactics outside of the legal system, because according to this Intercept reporting, they hired private investigators. They created a publication to smear you. They had you disbarred your bank accounts first. I mean, talk about those extraordinary measures even outside of the legal system that you've been telling us about it.
Sure. I mean, I have been the target of probably the most abusive corporate attack of any lawyer in American history. I mean, there's a lot of human rights lawyers in the world suffering fates worse than mine. So I want to make that clear. But for the United States, this is unheard of. Basically, they have spied on me. They hired Kroll, which is a corporate investigations firm, to follow my family around for weeks. They have frozen my bank accounts. Judge Kaplan allowed them to do that. I've been sort of wiped off the grid financially. I'm dependent on others now for my very survival. I live with my wife and 14-year-old son in a small Manhattan apartment under house arrest during the pandemic. And they basically tried to disable my ability to advocate for my clients. I think Chevron has concluded that but for me, they wouldn't be facing this liability, but they're wrong. There's a lot of lawyers working on this. but they're very angry at me, because of this degree of accountability. And by the way, they can say what they want with their propaganda statements, but the reality is in Ecuador, where they wanted the trial held, where they accepted jurisdiction, 4 courts have validated this judgment. In Canada, the Ontario Court of Appeals and the Supreme Court have validated the judgment for enforcement purposes. The only judge who declared it was a fraud was a U.S. judge who denied me a jury and relied on false witness testimony, which we're still challenging. But because Judge Kaplan and Chevron are so nervous that the Ecuador judgment will be enforced in other jurisdictions against their assets, countries like Canada, Australia, Indonesia, France, et cetera, they are trying to basically lock me up. They've taken my passport. Before this happened, I would travel to and work with lawyers in these other jurisdictions quite effectively. They want me detained, so I cannot do my job to enforce the judgment. They impose an $800,000 bond on me for a misdemeanor, and I have no criminal record. That's higher than 3 of the 4 cops who killed George Floyd. Okay, and I'm a lawyer in New York who successfully won a case. And they are obviously putting me under 24/7 monitoring, and I haven't even had a trial yet. It's a very, very punitive, unprecedented corporate attack. And the craziest part is I'm being prosecuted by a private law firm that admitted that Chevron and many oil and gas industry entities are clients. They make their revenue, and they're being paid by the hour to prosecute me by taxpayers. So the big picture here, these types of corporate attacks using the legal system on activists, on lawyers, are increasing. Greenpeace has been attacked through the same methods. These types of attacks are happening in the United States as well as other countries, and they're designed to silence corporate accountability. They're designed to silence environmental justice lawyers and activists, and they're designed to obtain impunity for human rights violators. I mean, Chevron has perpetrated through Texaco a terrible crime. They don't even deny it. They just talk about Steven Donziger.
Right.
The real story is what they did to the indigenous people of Ecuador, how literally hundreds, if not thousands of people have died of cancer. Nobody's paying attention to this. And Chevron has literally hired 60 law firms and 2,000 lawyers and spent probably $2 billion trying to attack me rather than cleaning up the environmental pollution they left in Ecuador. It's a travesty of justice.
Yeah, it's
a
insane.
tragedy, but it's really reflects, I think, a very dangerous trend that's happening in our society in the age of Donald Trump. We have to be very careful. And I really would ask people to pay attention to this and pay attention to my situation, because I need people to speak out and try to protect those of us who are being attacked.
Steve, we're very glad that we could shine a light on this. Just very quickly, where can people find out more about how to support you in your case?
Sure. So we have a website called MakeChevronCleanup.com where you can take action. You can also go to my Twitter. I do a lot of posting on the case @SDonziger. And I have a defense fund. We have costs, and if people want to help in that regard, it's DonzigerDefense.com, all one word. Thank you very much, guys. I really appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you, Steve.
Thanks, Steve. It's our pleasure.
Appreciate it.
Hey, good evening, everyone. My name's Dan Whitfield. I am the Democratic candidate running for United States Senate here in Arkansas to unseat and replace Senator John Boozman. I did play one of my older videos when I had first decided I wanted to run for office. I am not running as an independent. I am running as a Democrat. All right, so we have had another exciting week. There's been a whole lot of different things that have happened socially throughout our state, our country, and also with our campaign. So I will try to get through all of these different things as fast as possible. That way I don't take much of your evening. Now, I do a weekly live stream update Q&A every Saturday night at 6 p.m. Central, and I will continue doing this. So if you don't catch it now live, you can watch it later, and then also you could catch me next week live, because this is also a Q&A. That way, if you have any questions, I'll answer your questions live and make sure that I can alleviate any concerns that you have. All right, so the first thing I want to talk about is a little bit about Stephen Dorziger. that gentleman who the video we just watched was about. He is a lawyer being targeted by the fossil fuel industry because he helped win a lawsuit against the fossil fuel industry against Chevron back, I think it was into the 2000s. And they actually lost the lawsuit, and Chevron had to pay out $9.5 billion to these people down in the Amazon rainforest, where Chevron had destroyed 1,500 square miles because they were not practicing any kind of safety procedures at all when they were doing their drilling. And you saw a little bit in the video of the different issues that they were having with just rivers that were oil, just straight oil rivers, because it polluted so much. The wildlife that has been affected, hundreds of thousands of people are dying from cancer. These are really terrible crimes that Chevron lost a lawsuit and was supposed to answer for. And after they lost that $9.5 billion lawsuit, what happened was a Texas judge, Kaplan, actually came in and said, you know what, Chevron, you don't have to pay because it's a foreign entity and you don't have to pay them. It's out of their jurisdiction. So Chevron has not been held accountable for the crimes that they committed. And why this is important, why I'm bringing this up, is we need to make sure that lawyers and environmentalists, that activists, are not being targeted by the fossil fuel industry for the acts they're doing to save our planet. They're doing nothing wrong. They're helping fight for us, and we are allowing our government to I think currently he's at 592 days. He's been on house arrest now for this alleged crime. And we need to make sure that we are protecting people like this. We're showing support to them, and we're thanking them for the work that they've done, the activism in fighting for us, our families, and our ecology, our planet, and everything. And the reason that the fossil fuel industry is able to get away with doing things like this is because they put money in judges' pockets. They put money in special interest pockets. They put unlimited amounts of money in politicians and the political process. So we have to make sure that we are really focusing on campaign finance reform. That way we can prevent fossil fuel industry companies like Chevron and Texaco, Exxon, all these different companies. We have to prevent them from having an influence on our legislative process. We have to make sure that they are held accountable for their crimes and they do clean up the messes that they create. All right, so enough with that whole spiel. It's something that I had actually... come on, chair, move backwards a little bit. Thank you. I had actually studied back when I was doing my business law class because it was a really important lawsuit. And I didn't realize that Mr. Stephen was actually still under house arrest and still being prosecuted and persecuted for his act on behalf of these people who were wronged by Chevron. All right. So make sure you check him out. I will go ahead and I'll retweet. I retweeted that video earlier, or a different video earlier about him. And actually, in fact, you know what? I'll show one more video real quick. Let me see if I can pull up a window share. Just because people really need to know what's going on with this. Let me click profile. Open up a window capture. Okay, put this here. All right. I'm just gonna make it a little bit bigger. No, come over here. Hello, peekaboo. All right. Let's find this video on here. It's fairly short. It's really not long at all. 2 minutes long.
Chernobyl. 1,700 square miles of land in the Ecuadorian Amazon, devastated by decades of reckless oil drilling. 10 years ago, Ecuador's Supreme Court ordered Chevron to pay $18 billion for dumping over 70 billion liters of oil and toxic waste into the Amazon. The ruling came in a lawsuit brought on behalf of 30,000 Amazonian indigenous people who'd been suffering since the mid-60s, when Texaco began drilling on their ancestral land. Chevron bought Texaco in 2000. The landmark ruling was seen as a major victory for the environment and corporate accountability. But Chevron refused to pay or clean up the land. Instead of cleaning up the Ecuadorian Amazon, Chevron has spent the past decade waging an unprecedented legal battle to avoid paying for the environmental damage, while also trying to take down the environmental lawyer Stephen Danziger, who helped bring the landmark case. With the help of dozens of law firms, Chevron has ended Donziger's legal career. He's been disbarred. His bank accounts have been frozen. He's been forced to surrender his passport. Steve Donziger has also been under house arrest for nearly 600 days after a federal judge drafted a criminal complaint charges against him for refusing to turn over his cell phone and computer. In an unusual legal twist, the judge appointed a
I want to clarify real quick, for refusing to turn over his cell phone and his computer to Chevron, not to the government or anything or a lawyer, but to Chevron.
Private law firm with ties to Chevron to prosecute Donziger after federal prosecutors declined to bring charges. Many of his supporters see Donziger as a corporate political prisoner. His case is attracting growing attention with the legal world as well as among environmentalists and human rights activists. 55 Nobel laureates, including 10 recipients of the Nobel Peace Prize, have called for an end to the judicial attacks on Donziger. A coalition of groups, including Amnesty International, Amazon Watch, the National Lawyers Guild, and others, recently wrote to Attorney General Merrick Garland, asking him to investigate what they describe as, quote, disturbing legal attacks on Donziger.
All right. So it is a really important issue, and if you're interested in environmental justice, business law, or anything like that, I suggest you check it out. But I'm going to go ahead and move on from that issue right there, and we're going to next talk about COVID here in Arkansas. So right now, last week we had about an average of around 300 cases per day, and this week we're down to probably around an average of like 200, 250 cases per day. So our new cases from COVID-19 infections have gone down, which is good. Hopefully we'll continue moving in the same direction. Unfortunately, our total deaths have not really gone down as significantly as the new infection rates. And we are at a total of 2,676 Arkansans have now lost their lives due to this deadly pandemic. Let's go ahead and move on to vaccination rates. It looks like we have now given 947,997. So about 948,000 Arkansans have received their COVID vaccine. And we have received 1.66 million doses. So we still have a lot of doses received that have not been administered to the general public. Now, I believe Asa Hutchinson announced a day or two ago that the National Guard will be helping to administer COVID vaccines. So hopefully we can get our vaccination rate up a little bit faster. But 947,000 out of 3 million people, we are making progress. So good job, y'all. Keep it up. I'm actually very excited to report to y'all that I do work for the transportation industry. I'm in IT, information technology, specializing in automation for JB Hunt. So as a transport employee, I'm now eligible for a vaccine. So I have mine scheduled for Tuesday, March 23rd, which means I will be getting, I'll be able to hit the road campaigning here soon. So I had a really good leadership meeting today. We made a whole list of things that we're going to get started doing, and I will be beginning to travel the state and talk to y'all soon. So if you would like to set up a meet and greet, send me a message, let me know your location, how many people want to be there, and we'll figure out a good time and date to do that. But I'm very excited to be able to finally start campaigning when we do have some people who don't really believe the threats and the danger of COVID-19. I've already been campaigning this whole time. All right. Man, why is my OBS streaming at such a low bit rate? There's no way for me to adjust that either. Let's go into settings real quick. Output. Let's go ahead and raise our video bitrate way up to about 6,000 kilobytes per second. And see if that helps out. All right. So continuing right along. Am I still there? Looking a little choppy now. Oh no. Okay. Anyways, I'll have this issue figured out. I may stop using OBS Studio and move to a paid program here soon to make sure that we don't have any more technical glitches like this. But at least it's not disconnecting and reconnecting. All right, so we are making progress with COVID-19. Make sure you are still wearing a mask. Make sure you are still socially distancing, washing your hands, taking care of yourself, your family, and the people around you. All right. I did my first legislative recap live stream yesterday. Oh man. Let me try settings. I am getting a lot of interruptions. All right, so let's do max quality. Change our auto bitrate up to 320. And see if that helps a little bit. Maybe? Oh my gosh. Let's check my performance. Google Chrome, OBS Studio. I mean, we should be good. Check my camera properties. All right. Well, sorry, y'all. Dang. Hey, Mr. Jim, I see you're there. How's that bitrate looking on your part there? Oh, it's like showing me video interrupted and stuff. Oh my goodness. There, is that working a little bit better at all? It's up to about 3,000 now. Yes, Jim, and I'm actually going to talk about that in just a little bit. I'm going to show a video for y'all. I do want to go ahead and go over those. Man, I might have to restart my live stream. I hate doing this, but I may have to. Okay. Testing 1, 2. I'm looking at all of this stuff on here. Dang, I hate wasting y'all's time with these technical glitches. All right, well, moving on, it looks like it is starting to buffer down a little bit. All right. So, moving on, I have started doing 2 weekly live streams. I am doing a legislative recap Friday evenings at 8 p.m. Central. And I tried to just read through everything our state legislators had done the prior week last night. And unfortunately, I only made it halfway through Monday before we were like an hour and 45 minutes in. So that's not going to be the way we're going to do it. Starting next week, when I get off work at 3 p.m., I'll immediately start looking through everything and I'll take highlights. So I'll spend 5 hours gathering the highlights and then we can go over the highlights and go ahead and talk about the important. I know they actually got them all in their new little habitats. They're quite happy right now. But I'll talk about the highlights so we can try to make it into like maybe an hour or so and not have to worry about spending 10 hours talking about everything our state legislators have been doing the prior week. All right, but it is looking better now. I'm not sure what that glitch was. Let's see here. So there are a few different things I wanted to bring up legislatively that are going on here in our state in Arkansas real quickly. The first thing is Bob Ballinger with his SB 354, the Stand Your Ground law, they are removing or attempting to remove the duty to be lawfully present before using deadly physical force against a person. They're trying to make it so that you can be basically anywhere carrying your concealed firearm, whether or not it is legal or permitted to do so. So somebody could come into your house, not announce they have a firearm, and then for whatever reason say they feel threatened, draw their firearm, use deadly physical force against you in your home, and they will not be charged for being there unlawfully. So very interesting things, just more really extreme right legislation that's happening. Another thing is they have banned trans children from participating in school sports, which is just, it is absolutely disgusting to target children and to discriminate against children for participating in school sports. And I want to play you a short video real quick, which actually really, I mean, this guy, he's just so amazing. Let me see here. Is it this one here?
So 8 years ago,
It is
Steve
not that
Donziger and a team of
one.
Ecuadorian lawyers won the
Properties.
largest human rights court judgment in history in a 9.
My name is Brandon Bulware.
All right, here we go.
And Chairman, I'll go as quickly as I can. I'm a lifelong Missourian. I'm a business lawyer. I'm a Christian. I'm the son of a Methodist minister. I'm a husband. I'm the father of 4 kids, 2 boys, 2 girls, including a wonderful and beautiful transgender daughter, who today happens to be her birthday. And I chose to be here. She doesn't know that. She thinks I'm at work. One thing I often hear when transgender issues are discussed is, I don't get it. I don't understand. And I would expect some of you to have said that and feel the same way. I didn't get it either. For years, I didn't get it. For years, I would not let my daughter wear girl clothes. I did not let her play with girl toys. I forced my daughter to wear boy clothes and get short haircuts, play on boy sports teams. Why did I do this? To protect my child. I did not want my daughter or her siblings to get teased. And truth be told, I did it to protect myself as well. I wanted to avoid those inevitable questions as to why my child did not look and act like a boy. My child was miserable. I cannot overstate that. She was absolutely miserable, especially at school. No confidence, no friends, no laughter. I honestly say this, I had a child who did not smile. We did that for years. We did that against the advice of teachers, therapists, and other experts. I remember the day everything changed for me. I'd gotten home from work, and my daughter and her brother were in the front lawn. And my daughter had sneaked on one of her older sister's play dresses. And they wanted to go across the street and play with the neighbor's kids. It was time for dinner. I said, come in. She asked, can she go across the street? I said, no. She asked me if she went inside and put on boy clothes, could she then go across the street and play? And it's then that it hit me that my daughter was equating being good with being someone else. I was teaching her to deny who she is. As a parent, the one thing we cannot do, the one thing, is silence our child's spirit. And so on that day, my wife and I stopped silencing our child's spirit. The moment we allowed my daughter to be who she is, to grow her hair, to wear the clothes she wanted to wear, she was a different child. And I mean, it was immediate. It was a total transformation. I now have a confident, a smiling, a happy daughter. She plays on a girls' volleyball team. She has friendships. She's a kid. I came here today as a parent to share my story. I need you to understand that this language, if it becomes law, will have real effects on real people. It will affect my daughter. It will mean she cannot play on the girls' volleyball team or dance squad or tennis team. I ask you, please don't take that away from my daughter or the countless others like her who are out there. Let them have their childhoods. Let them be who they are. I ask you to vote against this legislation.
Wow. Powerful stuff coming from a parent who understands a trans child and the struggles that they have to go through. we have legislators who have no idea what it's like to be in that kind of situation and to be that kind of person. And they are making legislation that is going to punish these children for being who they are. It's absolutely disgusting. The woman who called the children abominations on the House floor is absolutely disgusting. We have a lot of work we need to do here in Arkansas to educate ignorant people, because there are a lot of ignorant people. Unfortunately, we're one of the lowest states ranked in education, and when we start passing legislation like this, it really shows. That's just another thing that happened in our state this week. Another thing that has happened this week is Bob Ballinger has also submitted a bill to prevent collective bargaining from public employees, so that public employees cannot gather together and organize together and fight for higher wages for themselves. So I hope that bill doesn't make it out of committee and doesn't pass. It's just another Bob Ballinger thing. Let's see. Another thing that they did, we did ban abortion. Something here. Let's see. I want to briefly read through a news article from ABC News on here real quick for you guys. It's titled, "The Arkansas Abortion Bill Would Require Rape Incest Reports." So, Little Rock, Arkansas. The Arkansas Senate on Thursday voted to require victims of rape and incests to have first reported the crime to law enforcement before they could undergo an abortion past the state's 20-week limit. The more, however, could not be moot if an outright abortion ban, Governor Asa Hutchinson signed into law a little over a week ago, moves forward. Abortion rights supporters have vowed to challenge that ban, which doesn't include rape or incest exemptions, before it takes effect later this summer. It also comes as the state is defending an 18-week abortion ban put on hold by the courts that does include those exemptions. The bill, approved on a 26-6 vote Thursday, would add the reporting requirement to all states' abortion cutoffs, including ones blocked by the courts that allow the procedure in cases of rape and incest. Abortion providers would be required to report to the state the number of procedures performed because of rape or incests. So, wow, you're telling me that a victim of a sex crime has to go and report it to law enforcement before they could even get an abortion. And that's if the abortion ban, before the abortion ban takes effect, because that was already signed into law by Asa Hutchinson while he was, I'm going to sign this law. And by the way, it is unconstitutional, but I'm going to sign it anyways. I mean, completely insane things going on here in Arkansas legislative politics. But that's very interesting to talk about. I mean, we cannot be legislating women's bodies' rights. We just can't. I am pro-life. I wouldn't have an abortion. My wife wouldn't have an abortion. But that doesn't mean we're going to take that choice away from someone who may need it, or someone who decides it's what's best for them and their family. It's a choice. So I am pro-choice. And I mean, how would our legislators feel if we did the same thing with, say, vasectomies? Then would they decide that, I don't want to get a vasectomy. That's my body, my choice. Okay, well, now you might be able to understand a little bit how women are starting to feel. But yeah, that's just something else that's really terrible here in Arkansas. Of course, we need to write our legislators, write our governor, and let them know how we feel about these unconstitutional laws that they're spending our resources, our money on, when the next thing we're going to have to do is spend more resources and more of our money fighting for these unconstitutional bills in the Supreme Court. So, let's see. Another bill that was submitted this week was a desecration bill, making it illegal to desecrate a flag, to deface it, to burn it, to destroy a flag. I mean, I don't support desecrating our flag. I'm a proud American. I'm a patriot. I have a lot of military, a lot of law enforcement in my family. I've always been a proud American, even though our government is kind of a terroristic government that is really sought on attacking poor nations to steal their natural resources. But I am still a proud American. I would never desecrate a flag. I fly one in front of my house. but this bill would make it illegal to do so. And the problem with that is it really starts us down a slippery slope towards losing our First Amendment rights. We have to have that freedom to make that choice ourselves. Again, it's a choice. There are a lot of veterans, many veterans I've spoken to, who went to war. They fought, they gave their bodies to our country to fight for our freedom. And they did that so that people would have that choice and that freedom to destroy a flag if they so chose. Those are the freedoms that we have as Americans. We can't be taking our First Amendment freedoms away. Let's see. I'm going through all this kind of fast. I'm trying to hurry through. I'm making some chicken sushi tonight. I'm excited. Let's see. Another thing that was in the national spotlight this week, which was very interesting, was the White House has actually fired 7 staffers who didn't test positive for cannabis use, who aren't currently using cannabis, but who have in the past used cannabis. So I think it's very hypocritical that that people were fired from the White House for using cannabis when, in fact, Vice President Kamala Harris has admitted to not only using cannabis, but has admitted to inhaling cannabis. So we need to stop targeting and criminalizing people for past use of cannabis. It's a plant. I don't use cannabis, but I still think people have the freedom to choose what they want to put into their own bodies, especially when not a single person has ever died from a cannabis overdose, yet we have people dying every day from the opioid epidemic, from prescribed pills. We have people dying every day from tobacco, from diabetes, from obesity, from alcohol, tobacco, all these different things. But cannabis has never killed anyone, but it's illegal. Why? Ask yourself why. Well, cannabis was first made illegal back in the 30s with the whole purpose of targeting minorities, because that was the minorities' recreational drug of choice was cannabis. So how do we target these people? Well, let's make their recreational drug of choice illegal. It's the same tactic they did back in the early 1900s when a lot of Chinese immigrants were coming to America to work in the gold rush and on the railroads, and their drug of choice was opium. And so what do? They make opium illegal. That way they could target immigrants and send them away. We can't use recreational drugs as a way to discriminately target groups of people. Cannabis needs to be federally decriminalized. We need to make sure that we federally expunge or we nationally expunge all cannabis convictions. There's a lot of things we have to do, but we need to make sure, number one, that the people at the top, the people who should be being role models, the White House, is not being Hippocratic, where they're firing staffers for past use of cannabis, yet allowing the second highest office, the executive branch, the vice president, to remain in place while she has announced publicly that she has smoked cannabis and has inhaled. You shouldn't fire her for it. You shouldn't fire the staffers for it. Nobody should be fired for it unless you're getting high on the job and it's affecting your work. But that's my spiel on cannabis. That was just a national highlight thing, and I think that it is something that needs to be talked about. We have to stop being Hippocratic. We have to stop using it as a way to discriminately target groups of people. And also, I had done research. Let me pull up my Twitter real quick here so I can give you accurate numbers. But I was looking at different research papers done about cannabis, and there was one that caught my attention. Let's see, where are you at? Senate bill. Here we go. A 2019 survey by the Afghanistan Veterans of America polled that 75% of veterans say they would consider using cannabis as a treatment option, say for pain relief or for PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. And 83% of those veterans support medicinal cannabis. So what I say is, when you have people who have put their lives on the line for our country to fight for our freedoms, we should be listening to them on what freedoms they want to be able to take advantage of being Americans. So it's a very important thing to think about. If 83% of veterans are expressing support for medicinal cannabis, maybe cannabis should be medicinally supported throughout our entire country. All right. A little fruit fly got out of my mantis cage. Let's see here. All right, so I do want to talk very briefly about my ballot access hearing from our 2020 campaign to unseat and replace Senator Tom Cotton, because we're finally getting some progress on it 7.5 months after we filed our appeal, or our first expedite in our appeal. So I'm going to play just a couple of very short clips for y'all, just some highlights. They did have our ballot access hearing in front of the 8th Circuit Courts on March 18th, which was last Thursday, and it lasted about 28 minutes long, and I did post the entire 28-minute transcript, or, well, it's not even a transcript, the verbal recording of it on both Facebook and Twitter, but I'm going to play just a couple quick clips for you because I think these are very important to understand how the case is moving and how the Attorney General's office is corrupt.
My name is Brandon Bulware.
Thank you, Your Honor. My name is Dylan Jacobs. I'm an Assistant Solicitor General here on behalf of Arkansas Secretary of State John Thurston. If I may, I'd like to begin with the mootness issue and then later move on to the merits. Dan Whitfield brought this case so that he could be placed on the ballot for the November 2020 election. That election is over, and there is no relief that this court could order that could change that. And Whitfield's only alleged injury, which is exclusion from the 2020 ballot, is no longer redressable by a court, and that renders this case moot.
All right, so that was Jacobs, the Assistant Solicitor General, stating that the case is moot because what we asked for was ballot access, and the election's already over, so it's therefore moot. That is the seventh claim in time that the Attorney General's office had asked that our case be dismissed as moot. So let me play this one real quick.
Whitfield doesn't contest that nothing can be done about the 2020 election. He makes primarily two arguments against mootness. The first is that declaratory or injunctive relief as to future elections is enough to render the case not moot, but that isn't right because that doesn't redress any injury that Whitfield himself would have. Because as your honors were discussing, there's nothing in the record that gives any indication that Whitfield has any plans to run again as an independent candidate for state office in Arkansas.
Mr. Jacobs, he also argues that the same complaining party requirement doesn't apply in election cases. How do you respond to that?
So I don't think that's right, Your Honor. And it is true in older cases such as Storer and Anderson. In the footnotes in those cases where they discuss mootness, they don't mention that requirement.
All right, so number one, he blatantly lied because it is in both of our briefs, we've mentioned it before, the Libertarian Party and the Green Party, being two political parties, have an open 90-day period to collect signatures, whereas independents have a fixed 90-day period, which is why the Libertarian Party was able to spend $55,000 in the summer of 2019 to get their signatures, yet we couldn't collect until February 1st until May 1st, 2020, in which petitioning companies weren't even working. So there is a difference, and he knew there was a difference, but he lied about it. All right, I'm almost done, just a couple more.
As the Seventh Circuit recognized, Krislav, signature challenges are routinely resolved, prior to elections now. And I think this court's handling of the Miller versus Thurston case last summer demonstrates that these sorts of cases can be expeditiously decided both by the district court and by this court. So that case involved a judgment entered by the district court, a final judgment in late May, and this court ordered expedition and rendered a decision less than 2 months after the district court's final judgment. And had Whitfield sought expedited review expeditiously and with a more meritorious case, perhaps, this court was fully capable of resolving that prior to August deadlines for printing ballots.
So it's interesting because they claim that, well, the court had the time to do it if we had sought to have it expeditiously done, but we filed our first expedite on July the 8th. We filed our second expedite on July, I think like 22nd. We filed 2 expedites and we were denied both times. And both times we filed an expedite, the Attorney General's office actually filed oppositions to our expedite. Again, these are just a couple short clips. I think I only have 2 more short ones to play from my attorney, James Linger, who did a great job representing our case.
Thank you, Your Honor. I said, in regard to the argument about the expedited appeal, and this is the only case I've ever had where I actually filed 2 motions for expedited appeal. I think if you go back and look at the Libertarian case decided also by Judge Baker in 2019, which the Secretary of State appealed, we got our motion filed quicker than they did in the 8th Circuit. And one of the reasons we did not start with the district court is I remember in that case, they had filed a motion and for injunctive relief and reconsideration, and they ended up filing in the 8th Circuit because it went along for quite a few weeks and they decided to go on and do that. So I think we got to the court in plenty of time for a decision. I think we made some good points there, but after the court turned down the request for injunction and expedited appeal, then I simply filed a request for expedited appeal as to that, and we filed our first brief according to what we asked for. I think the next day after we filed, we were turned down on that expedited appeal, unlike the Secretary of State in the previous case the year before when they were granted expedited appeal, although they eventually lost that case. So
I think that's very funny. It's actually very interesting where we filed our first expedited appeal 2 weeks after the original judgment from Christine Baker, because we had to file our appeal and then we had to file all the paperwork and then you have to get a case number and then you can file your expedite. So we did everything as fast as possible. Now, we actually, the year before in 2019, when the Libertarian Party sued the Secretary of State John Thurston to reduce the signature count from 27,000 down to 10,000, they won that case in district courts. And then the Attorney General appealed that case to the 8th Circuit courts, and then they later lost that appeal. Now, we actually filed our appeal in a shorter time than the Attorney General took to file their expedite, and ours was denied, but theirs was approved. And let's see, I'm almost done. Just another short clip here.
So I think they did act expeditiously, and it seems a bit ironic to me that you could have one of these decisions, ask for an expedited appeal, be turned down twice, and then when the election is over, say, now the case is moot. That doesn't seem fair under the circumstances and under the exceptions recognized, because I think it is clear that this issue will come up again.
It's like rain. Yeah, isn't it ironic? Oh my gosh, they're like, well, the case is after the election now, so it's moot. But we're going to oppose your expedites to make sure your case happens after the election. That way we can file it moot. Just insanity to me. Oh my gosh. And I believe there's one more short clip.
On the same day you turned in the petitions. And we argued there that when it was May 1st, we were challenging that because it wasn't that much of an improvement, because basically you had to stop petitioning on April 30th. And there was a question about that. But this court did not get to that decision there because it had mooted the case because of the change of the law, and that had been done all after the briefing. But the court still thought that this court had upheld a May 1 deadline. And a May 1 deadline for independent candidates, where they have this set non-rolling fixed petitioning period, when they have 10,000 signatures, that's hardly ever been complied with since 1978, only twice.
Since 1978 in the state of Arkansas, only 2 independent candidates have received the 10,000 verified signatures required for ballot access. I think that alone proves how unconstitutionally severe burdensome it is to collect 10,000 verified signatures, especially when the verification rate can be between 60 to 70%, meaning you really need 15 to 17,000 signatures. Now, on the contrary, we actually were able to get 6,500 signatures, and 91% of them were verified. So we got 5,994 out of 6,500. We did a really good job because I had so many wonderful supporters. And thank you guys so much for all the time and effort you put into that. It's going to pay off because through all of this, our goal now is to make sure that independent candidates in the future don't have a fixed 90-day period, unlike every other political party. That independent candidates running for a state office like that will have an open 90-day period just like everybody else, because we have to make sure that it's not unconstitutional when trying to gain ballot access. But that's all I really wanted to talk about as far as my ballot access hearing from the 2020 case. I didn't want to spend a lot of time on it. We actually, at the very end, it's 28 minutes long, they didn't give an opinion. They didn't make a judgment at the end of our oral arguments, which is actually kind of interesting, because if they wanted to throw it out as moot, they'd just been like, well, this case is moot, so we're throwing it out. But they didn't do that. They want to think about it, which I think is good for us. And I think we may be able to help independent candidates in the future running for statewide office here in Arkansas, because we have a problem here. We don't have a problem of overcrowding of ballots. We have a problem of so many Republicans running unopposed every single year. So we are going to do what we can to fix that. I'll let you know as soon as we get the opinion from the courts on how it goes for independent candidates. Gosh, my hair's getting long. I'm so excited. I'm ready for my vaccine on March 23rd on Tuesday. And one of the first things I'm going to do once 2 weeks after I get my second dose is I'm going to go get a haircut, because it's about time. All right. So moving along, I'm almost done here. There are a few things I want to talk about. We are getting the campaign going. Like I said, I'm about to get vaccinated, so we're going to start campaigning really hard. I'm going to start traveling the state. I'm going to start doing meet and greets, talking to people, holding fundraising events, holding fun campaign events like fishing tournaments where we can get Republicans and Democrats and Libertarians and Green Party and everybody together to throw some lines in the water, catch some fish, barbecue, eat some fish, eat some hot dogs, burgers, maybe even some veggie burgers, whatever you guys want to eat, and get to ask me some questions, and so we can get to know each other a little bit better. So we will be beginning to do that here soon. And on part of that is what we really need to do is we've got to start fundraising. I do have some money cash on hand from our last campaign, which rolled over because it is a federal campaign. And now we need to start adding to our pool, because that money's not going to last very long. As we start traveling, it's going to go down and down and down. We have to make sure we still have enough money left over to pay for the filing fee at the beginning of next year. So my website is danforarkansas.com. And if you really want change, if you want Arkansans and Americans to have an actual voice in the legislative process, go to danforarkansas.com. There's donation buttons all over my website. Donate whatever you can, whether it's $1, $5, $10, or just whatever you can. If you can set up a reoccurring weekly or monthly or annually even contribution, and try to help us out, because right now we are 100% grassroots. All of our contributions, 100%, have come from small individual donations and individual donations between $200 and $1,000. So I'm going to do everything I can to make sure that I'm never even, I'll never be held accountable to special interests, but I don't even want that kind of appearance. So I'll do everything I can to run a grassroots campaign and make sure that I will always work for you and your families, and never for a donor or special interest, ever. So we've got to get volunteering going. Is the next thing. And if you can volunteer, if you're able just to set up a meet and greet, if you are able to be in an area and help coordinate a meet and greet being set up or an event, reach out to me on social media. You can give me a phone call, an email, a text message, whatever you're most comfortable with. danforarkansas.com, the contact tab on there. Reach out. I'm going to need volunteers, and I'm going to need local area volunteer coordinators. I have an overall volunteer coordinator who will be working with my local coordinators so that we can make this as organized and efficient as possible. I'm going to begin working on a weekly newsletter, kind of doing similar to the same thing I'm doing with my live streams, where legislative recap plus my update Q&A that I can start sending out on Sunday nights. So if someone's unable to make a live stream, they can just hop on, view my weekly newsletter, and see kind of what's going on and get the footnotes of it. But we've got to get fundraising going. I do have an ActBlue account. So if you go to ActBlue, search Dan Whitfield, you will see my name on there if you're more comfortable donating there rather than DonorBox. DonorBox is just easier for my wife who does our FEC filings. Just please, we've got to get contributions coming in. I'm going to have to start doing the contribution ads and things like that. But I mean, like I said, 100% grassroots. You guys helped so much last campaign. I love your continued support. We're going to continue this fight, and we're going to do everything we can to take our government back from the special interests that have purchased it. So that leaves us for what is coming up in the next week. And it looks like for this next week, we have the Washington County Democratic Women meeting at 6 p.m. If that's virtual, I will try to attend. And if it is not virtual, I'm not going to go this month. I'll wait until next month after I'm vaccinated and had my 2 weeks clearance. But let's see, this last week I spoke with the Boone County Democrats. What an awesome meeting it was. I love meeting so many wonderful people. You guys are just great. Boone County has all these counties, you guys all have some of the best quality people in your Democratic parties, and I love it. I'm so honored to be able to meet y'all and talk to you and to have your attention. And I hope I can earn your support as we continue this campaign. And then I joined the Garland County Democratic meeting. And thank you, Mr. Lee Crawford. He was giving a committee report, and he kind of threw it off to me, which gave me the ability to speak with the Garland County Democrats as well. So mostly I talked about candidate recruitment. Now that the DPA has reduced filing fees down to $0, as long as you're not running against a Democratic incumbent and you get a signature from your committee chair or your local county chair or a committee member, then you can run for free, which is amazing because we had 66 Republicans run unopposed last cycle. So that brings me to, if you are thinking about running for office, if you know someone who might run for office, if you're not thinking about running for office, but you're tired of these ridiculous bills, these unconstitutional bills getting passed on our state legislative body, such as abortion bans, stand your ground, trans children sports bans, just ridiculous stuff, then please consider running for office. And I will do everything I can to help you. I'm sure your local Democratic Party will help you do anything they can to help you. If you want to run as an independent, reach out to me, and I will give you as many guides and steps as I can towards getting to where you need to be with your campaign, because unfortunately, when you run as an independent, you don't get much help. So you have to figure everything out yourself, and it takes a lot of time, months and months and months and months. So if you need help, let me know, and I'll do everything I can to help you run as an independent. And that's kind of where I'm at right now. I don't really have anything else to go over. I don't really see too many questions. I know a lot of people had hopped off because my stream was acting all funky, which is ridiculous. We upgraded to gigabyte internet. It shouldn't be acting funky at all. And like I said, I may look into new broadcasting software other than OBS. OBS is just cheap. And I've been trying to save as many campaign contributions as I can because we're going to need every penny we can running against someone like Jan Morgan and John Bozeman. Let me kind of just briefly go through Facebook here. Hi, Jeannie. I hope you're still here. Thank you so much for joining me again. I appreciate your amazing support. And I can't wait until after I'm vaccinated and you're vaccinated and give you a big old hug and go down to Fayetteville and meet some of my favorite people. Meet with some of my favorite people. Yeah, we do have legislators who need remedial education. Okay, awesome. So I don't see many questions on here. I kind of kept up with Twitch as it was going. So awesome. Well, if you guys have any other questions, you can reach out anytime. My campaign line is 479-418-6008. Give me a call if you have any questions, and I will answer, depending on if I'm in a meeting or working or whatever. But I will try to get back to you as soon as possible. Thank you guys again so much for taking the time out of your evening to join me. Don't miss our next live stream. It's going to be this upcoming Friday, which looks like it's going to be March 26th. And I'm going to do a much shorter legislative recap session where we just go over highlights. I'll spend the 5 hours before that and making sure I have it streamlined for y'all. And then, of course, my next live stream will be after that, next Saturday, 6 p.m. Central, where I give you guys an update. So thank you guys so much for joining me. You guys are awesome. I greatly, just so deeply appreciate your support. I couldn't be more humbled or honored to have it. If you guys have any questions, reach out. Have a wonderful evening, a safe weekend. May God bless y'all, and may God bless America.